All right, this is the next chapter of Inner Work, Notes on Inner Work by Michel de Salzmann, or transcribed by his pupils. And the title is Questions on Education, on Symbolism, on Human Types. The first one, on education. Question of the pupil. Observing a small child, we recognize that he brings everything back to himself. My car, my mom, my dad. Psychologists agree to see this as a natural stage necessary for the formation of personality. But how can we prevent this from reinforcing the ego? Michel. First of all, the child must be satisfied. It is only once his desire has been fully satisfied that he can be made to feel the movement of attachment that is specific to the ego. For example, to your child who adores tractors. Here's a tractor you can play with. It's yours. You are the king of the tractor for 5 minutes or a full day. Then suddenly everything can be taken away from him. Or one can ask him to give it up on his own. The tractor is given to another child. This can be very hard, but if for an instant or a day the feeling of satisfaction has been experienced, it will be possible for him to accept, perhaps to understand fleetingly, the trap of attachment. For this to work depends essentially on the feeling behind the action. Question of the pupil. It is difficult to see at what point we are prisoners of basic bodily postures, of physical emotional patterns coming from very far in the past. When you can see it in yourself, how can you get rid of it? Michel. The only possibility that exists is to create new associations, conscious associations. There is the idea that we can escape a law, that of automatism, only by submitting to another law, that of creating conscious links, which little by little will replace the old ones. That is a long work. The next one, on symbolism. Question of the pupil. During all these presentations on the symbolism of the cross, it seemed to me that the symbol gives rise to a multitude of meanings, and that the juxtaposition of these various interpretations leads to an arbitrary impression of incoherence, which ultimately would allow any old thing to be said. Michel, you are right. The symbol is crazy. If we consider the etymology of the word symbol, sim, with together bol, to throw, to launch, to dance. In other words, symbol means to dance with. Thus, the symbol is crazy in the sense that it calls the mind to break its habitual categories, to go beyond the divisions that our perceptions have created, and to explore the innumerable levels of meaning that it necessarily includes. In this way, one must enter into the spirit of the dance, into the whirlwind of multiplicity, a bit like whirling dervishes seeking to touch the inexpressible, the undefinable. Question of the pupil. Through symbolic language, can we not understand a little better what the true power of the imagination might be? That is to say, the power of the images which then become a means towards a greater opening? Michel. Indeed, that is what I mean by pointing out that symbol means to dance with. It allows a leap toward the higher, but at the same time it also has another aspect. The symbol can be seen from above, or more exactly, in a descending movement coming from a culminating experience. Brought back by travelers who reached the summit, the symbol appears as the manifestation of a stage of this experience. Linked to the domain of forms, it can then belong more particularly to one tradition. The third section of this section, on human types. Question of the pupil. Why is the question of human types so difficult? We see through Chinese or Western astrology, and through other classifications, that one facet of the person is revealed each time. But at the same time, one can be struck only by the fragmentary nature of this information. Is it possible for us to speak of a type only from a certain degree of being, a certain degree of humanity? For example, as it is said traditionally that the 12 apostles represent 12 types, can it be said then that the perception of types is possible only for an accomplished man? Michel, to approach this question more fully, it is certain that a more refined perception is necessary. But first of all, this is necessary in relation to oneself. It would be better to measure, to understand in oneself, what the energies of the 5 functions are: thought, emotion, instinctive center, moving center, sex. Perhaps only when this is fully understood will it be possible to observe in oneself and in others how these energies organize themselves through a natural movement, and thus to see different possible constellations. Furthermore, we can make this study practical by examining how different people react to a simple, precise, and specific situation. This is illustrated, for example, in fragments, when Mr. Gurdjieff throws his cane. This situation acts as a detector, a measuring device, and can bring out essential differences. Take, for example, the people who teach movements, or what happens during the Chandelier Zorkan, which is a Chandelier ritual that over the years closed the last evening's celebration. Something that does not depend on the particular conditioning of each person can then manifest. And that's it. And I will leave the discussion for later. All right, thanks.